World War II was fought not only on land and sea, but also in the skies, where bombers played a critical role in shaping the outcome of the war. Among the most iconic of these aircraft was the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, a massive and heavily armed bomber designed to unleash carnage on enemy targets while withstanding intense counterattacks. Despite its formidable firepower, flying in a B-17 was incredibly dangerous, with bomber crews facing relentless enemy fighters, deadly flak, and a constant threat of being shot down over enemy territory. Nowhere was the danger more pronounced than in the aircraft's most vulnerable positions, the tail and ball turret gunners. These brave airmen faced enemy fire head-on, defending their bombers and crewmates with nothing but a 50 caliber machine gun between them and death. Among their harrowing experiences, one story that stands out today is of incredible survival of a tail gunner who fell 28,000 feet after his aircraft was torn apart midair. This is the story of the B-17, its gunners, and the airmen who risked everything to march through hell that was unleashed above the clouds. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress earned its reputation as one of the most formidable bombers of World War II. Introduced in the late 1930s, the B-17 was designed for long-range strategic bombing, capable of carrying up to 8,000 pounds of bombs while being armed with up to 13 50-caliber M2 Browning machine guns for defense. It had a crew of 10, each member performing a crucial role in the success and survival of the mission. Nicknamed the Flying Fortress due to its heavy defensive armament, B-17 was instrumental in the U.S. Army Air Force's daylight precision bombing campaign. These missions aimed to cripple German industry, transportation, and military targets. However, the enemy quickly adapted, and German fighters like the Messerschmitt's Bf-109 and Focke-Wulf FW-190 relentlessly attacked formations of B-17s. Without long-range fighter escort, bombers had to rely on their own defensive weapons and tight formations to survive enemy assault. The crew's gunners positioned in the nose, waist, top turret, ball turret, and tail stood as the last line of defense. Each faced the daunting challenge of fending off swarms of enemy fighters determined to bring them down. One of the most crucial positions in a B-17 was the tail gunner. Stationed in the very rear of the aircraft, the tail gunner had a unique perspective, watching the sky behind the bomber, ready to open up fire on any enemy aircraft attempting to attack from the rear. The tail gunner operated two 50 caliber machine guns, firing at approaching enemy fighters while being completely exposed to return fire. The tail of the aircraft was one of the most targeted areas, as attacks from behind minimized a bomber's defensive firepower. Enemy pilots often lined up their shots with precision, and tail gunners frequently bore the brunt of these attacks. Adding to the misery, tail gunners had to crawl into their position with limited space to move. They wore heavy flight suits and oxygen masks to combat the freezing temperatures at high altitudes, which could reach negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit. If the aircraft was hit in the tail section, survival was highly unlikely, as the rear of the bomber could be severed entirely from the rest of the fuselage. One such case of catastrophe in the skies involved a tail gunner who fell 28,000 feet after a tail section of his B-17 was blown apart. Against all odds, he survived. During one of the many bombing missions over Nazi-occupied Europe, a B-17 bomber was attacked by German fighter planes. Enemy bullets and flak tore through the aircraft, causing catastrophic damage. The tail section was completely ripped off, and Staff Sergeant Alan McGee, the tail gunner, was thrown from the plane while still strapped into his seat. McGee fell from 28,000 feet and lost consciousness during the descent. In an almost unbelievable stroke of luck, he crashed through the glass roof of the Saint-Nazaire railway station in France. The impact of the glass and the structure helped break his fall, preventing instant death. Though he suffered severe injuries including broken bones, deep wounds, and internal damage, he miraculously survived. Local resistance fighters discovered McGee, treated his wounds, and helped him evade capture. Later, he was rescued by advancing Allied forces. His survival remains one of the most incredible stories of World War II, proving that even in the most desperate situations, a combination of luck and resilience can defy all odds. While enemy fighter planes were a constant danger to B-17 crews, one of the biggest threats in the sky was flak anti-aircraft guns designed to destroy bombers in midair. Flak, short for the German word Flugabwehrkanone, meaning air defense cannon, was a deadly challenge for every bombing mission. Germans placed these powerful guns around important targets like factories, military bases, and railways, making every flight a life-or-death situation. Flak shells were designed to explode at certain heights, creating a deadly cloud of metal fragments. These sharp pieces tear through a bomber's body, cut important control wires, and seriously injure or kill crew members. B-17 crews often faced flak at high altitudes of 25,000 to 30,000 feet, where black clouds of smoke marked each explosion. The blasts were incredibly loud, and the shockwaves could violently shake the aircraft. A direct hit could destroy a plane instantly, while near misses could damage engines, punch holes in fuel tanks, or wound the crew. Gunners, especially those in the waist, ball turret, and tail section, were most at risk. Unlike pilots or bombardiers who had stronger protection around them, the gunners were often exposed to flying metal through the bomber's thin walls. Many airmen were badly injured by flak, suffering serious wounds, burns, or even losing limbs. Despite the danger, bomber crews had no choice but to push through. The only way to avoid flak was to change altitude and direction often, but large groups of bombers couldn't move quickly without disturbing the formation. If they split up, they would become easy targets for enemy fighters. As the war continued, Germany improved its flak defenses, using radar to make their attacks even more accurate. This made flying even more dangerous. It wasn't until the Allies destroyed several German flak positions and introduced new electronic countermeasures that bombers' losses started to drop. However, for many veterans, the terrifying experience of flying through flak-filled skies remained a haunting memory, even long after the war had ended. For those who survived their time in the war, coming home was not always easy. Many B-17 crew members carried both physical and emotional wounds from their experiences. Today, we recognize these struggles as post-traumatic stress disorder. Facing death every day, losing close friends, and enduring constant stress of battle left deep scars on their minds. Some airmen returned as heroes, welcomed with celebrations, praise, and newspaper articles for their bravery, but others found it hard to adjust to normal life again. Going from dangerous combat missions to everyday routines felt strange and difficult. Some found comfort by staying in aviation, becoming commercial pilots, or working in the aerospace industry. Others wanted to leave flying behind forever, haunted by the memories of lost friends and terrifying missions. Tail gunners in particular carried a heavy burden. Many had seen their planes destroyed around them, sometimes being the only survivors of doomed bombers. Those who parachuted into enemy territory were often captured and sent to German prisoner of war camps. There they faced hunger, forced marches, and harsh interrogations. When they finally returned home, they had to rebuild their lives with little help, as support for veterans was not as strong as it is today. Despite these challenges, many B-17 veterans shared their stories so that the bravery and sacrifices of their fallen comrades would not be forgotten. Incredible survival stories like the tail gunner who fell 28,000 feet and lived became part of military history. These stories remind the world of both the horrors of war and the moments of pure luck. Today, only a few B-17s are still able to fly. They are kept in museums and reserved for air shows as a tribute to the airmen who once flew them. The legacy of the B-17 is not just in history books, but also in the memories of those who survived the deadly battles in the skies. If being a tail gunner was dangerous, being a ball gunner was even worse. The ball turret was a small, round glass chamber attached to the bomb of the B-17. Its job was to defend the bomber from enemy planes attacking from below. The gunner inside had two 50 caliber machine guns that could spin the turret in any direction, but he was in an extremely risky position. The turret was so small, only a short airman could fit inside. The gunner had to curl up tightly, looking through a small glass window while controlling the guns with hand grip. He sat in this cramped space, freezing temperatures, completely exposed in a thin metal and glass shell, with no armor to protect him. One of the biggest dangers was if the B-17 had to crash land on its belly. If the turret was damaged and could not be pulled back into the plane, the gunner would be trapped inside with no way to escape. Flying a B-17 was extremely dangerous. Crews flew at high altitudes where they could suffer from frostbite, lack of oxygen, and constant enemy attacks. The U.S. Army Air Force required bomber crews to complete 25 missions before they could go home. But early in the war, the chances of surviving all 25 missions were very low. In 1943, only about 1 in 4 airmen completed their tour. 3 of the 4 were either killed, captured, or severely injured before reaching 25 missions. Introduction of the P-51 Mustang, a powerful escort fighter, helped bomber crews survive by protecting them from enemy planes, but no fighter escort could completely protect them from anti-aircraft fire, plane malfunctions, or simple bad luck. The story of the B-17 and its gunners is one of incredible courage and sacrifice. These airmen fought in some of the most dangerous conditions, flying into enemy territory, knowing they might not return. The amazing survival of a tail gunner who fell 28,000 feet is just one example of the unpredictable nature of war and the resilience of those who fought in it. Although World War II ended long ago, the bravery of B-17 crews is still remembered today. Their sacrifices helped ensure victory, and their stories continue to inspire future generations.